Let's go for it! I like the dark stuff. Give me the dark stuff. I like the dark stuff. Give me the dark stuff. It's November sky. I'm in two hearts inside. This is the best idea. I choose to leave it here. There's nothing to stay within the project. No escape. But I can see us without this fear.
Hey there, everybody, it's me, your buddy Dave, the host of the Dark Stuff channel here on YouTube. Thanks a lot for checking out my new video. Today's video is a bit of a concert recap, review with some live clips of some shows I've seen recently. Last night I caught the Welsh band, the Joy Formidable. That was probably my third or fourth time seeing them. They had a great opening band named CUFFED Up from Los Angeles. That was really good. Got clips of them too. I also recently saw alternative legends The Cult, who I hadn't seen since 1989, and I caught them recently at the Admiral. Technically, I was working the show. We'll get into that in a little bit, but let's go ahead and start with the Joy Formidable show because it's fresher in my mind. It was from last night. So I started getting into the Joy Formidable probably 10 or more years ago, 10 or 11 years ago. And it was through my radio show. I got sent their album, The Big Roar, which is their debut. And also Wolf's Law, which came out a little bit later. Whoops, I'm dropping it here. Sorry, Wolf's Law. And what I really loved about the band was just these monster guitars. It was loud, great, 90s flavored guitar rock, which, you know, I sometimes refer to them as a shoegaze band, although they're technically not, and I think people who are more shoegaze purists would disagree with me on it, but they have elements of it in the same way that Swerve Driver, who do get called shoegaze all the time, really don't technically fit it either, because there is that shoegaze element, but there's also this element of really loud guitars, American influence of maybe like a Sonic Youth or a Dinosaur Jr. or whatever. Over the years, I would always listen to the Joy Formidable when a new record came out. If I got sent for the radio show, I'd play it on the air. But I did kind of lose touch with them a little bit. And so it was good getting reacquainted with them at the show last night.
Let's all eyes come see the show. Come see the show. Smoke screen eyes come see the show. Hold up, come see the show. Throwing pipe, come see the show. Open wide, come see the show. Touch the right star.
Now, I mentioned I have seen them a couple other times. They did the 2016 Omaha Music Festival, which I used to work at, and they weren't on my stage. They were on the big stage, and so I was just in the photo pit taking photos. But I must say, you know, not to toot my own horn, but some of my best work. Okay, these were some great photos of Joy Formidable from that particular gig. They came back in 2017 and played at the Waiting Room again. And in that show, I remember liking it, but when they played my favorite song, This Ladder Is Ours, they did like a mellower piano version or something, and I don't know. I didn't like it. remember them playing the song last night, so maybe they just don't play it the guitar way, but I loved it. Anyways, I digress. So at last night's show, they pointed out that they were, this was their first bit of touring since pre-COVID. So they were very much excited to be in front of an audience, to be playing, to be talking to people. And even though the audience was pretty small, under 100 people, I would say, which was a surprise considering how many people were there a few years ago, they were still very, very happy to be there. The crowd, small, but very enthusiastic. They chatted a lot with the audience. I mean, it got to a point where I actually said to my friend, I was like, okay, maybe they need to like do 2 songs in a row before they talk for like 5 minutes, but whatever. I enjoyed it, and they were having such a good time. You know, it's hard to complain about something like that, right? After the show, I went up and bought a copy of their newest album, Into the Blue. Okay, which I didn't even realize at the time came with a bonus 7-inch inside. So it came with this cool 7-inch with 2 different songs. And then here's the packaging, which is really nice. Okay, and the album is on white vinyl. Okay, opening for the Joy Formidable was a band that I had never heard of and never seen before called Cuffed Up. They're from Los Angeles. There were 4 of them last night, but strangely, in all the promotional materials, and I just started following them on Instagram, they just showed the 3 of them. So I don't know whether the extra guitar player was just like a touring member, or maybe she's newer in the band, and so just all the photos had already been taken or whatever. I'm really not sure, and I only talked to one of them, who was the singer, guitar player guy who was wearing the dress in the videos. That's the guy I spoke with for the most part, and he's the one who sold me the record. They definitely show an influence of like Sonic Youth and the Pixies and some of the bigger bands from the early 90s, the bigger alternative bands. What I was hearing at first was the band Versus. Okay, a New York band from the 90s, great, fantastic band. Their album, The Stars Are Insane, one of the best albums ever. Anyways, that's what I was sort of hearing. Then they said, all right, we're going to do a cover song, you know, and they played Breed by Nirvana. I love that, okay, because first of all, I'm an old guy. I remember Nirvana. I saw them in concert, you know. I mean, I've told my story about when I met Kurt Cobain at the record store. But I've had this debate with people my age talking about the younger generation, you know. And he was trying to make the argument that, you know, kids today, when they look back at the older music, they're not looking at Nirvana and they don't really see them as this. And I was like, dude, I don't know where you're getting this information, but I completely disagree, because I think, you know, that was 30 years ago. That's the equivalent of me in the 90s looking back at the 60s. So it was sort of like looking at Jimi Hendrix or the Beatles or the Doors or whatever, these older bands, and still having this real resonance with people. And I say Nirvana's up there in that range. So that cover proved it. I bought their newest album, EP, called Asymmetry. And the guy goes, hey, do you want me to sign it? Okay, if are all of you here, can you all sign it? So I got signatures from all of them on here. And the album was produced by Brad Wood. Brad Wood, noted for producing the first 2 Liz Phair records, among others, too. This back cover, definitely, that's sort of like a Pixies vibe there for sure. I listened to this record this morning. It was exceptionally good. Here's the custom labels there. I'm not sure that I really hear verses anymore. I mean, I know that's what I said before, but that was sort of in the moment. And then when I told the guy that, I was like, yeah, have you heard this band called Verses? Oh, here, defeating my point. Here's a picture with all four of them. So I don't know what I was... Maybe they're just using an old photo on their Instagram. But anyways, I'm thinking about it later. And, you know, Verses, maybe they do sound like Verses, but that was just the thing that hit me at that particular moment. But regardless, Cuffed Up, very, very good band.
Yes, we know sugar talking. Paradise dreams stealer. Your Warhol's diamond queen. Warhol.
So my other show to report on was seeing the legendary alternative rock band The Cult at the Admiral last September 25th. I remember when they came on the scene in 1985 with that album Love, which is a fantastic album. But me in 1985, like, my taste was just different then, and it didn't connect with me. In 87, they came out with this one, Electric. Okay, here's my OG 1987 original pressing with the gatefold. Okay, they transformed from a sort of British indie band into AC/DC virtually overnight. And since AC/DC in 1987 was sucking balls, it was really great to see that they did a full album of killer old school AC/DC stuff. I know it threw off a lot of their older fans, and it was kind of divisive at the time. I don't think it's divisive anymore because their next album, Sonic Temple, was a little more hard rock, but mixed with an alternative kind of production style. And I think people have just sort of settled on this is what The Cult is sort of like. They're not that same band from Love. They're not that band from Electric. They're a mix of a bunch of different stuff.
Every time you leave me, I'm watching crazy.
But, you know, they ran through all the hits, Edie, Chow Baby, Little Devil, Fire Woman, Rain, and She Sells Sanctuary, you know, all of the classics you'd want to hear. They threw in some new stuff. The band sounded really good. It's got the two original members, of course, Ian Astbury and Billy Duffy, the singer-guitar player. They're the band guys who formed the band. They are The Cult. I'm not sure who was on bass. The drummer, I'd been told from a friend of mine, has been in bands for years, has also did a stint in the heavy metal band Testament, and he was good. You know, I have no complaints about the drumming. It was solid stuff. I alluded to the fact that I was working the show, and initially I was planning on going with a buddy of mine, and we were just going to see The Cult. And at the last minute they called and asked if I could fill in the box office because they didn't have somebody there. So I went and did that, and my friend just kind of had to go to the show by himself. I got him a ticket and whatever. But, you know, the box office closes about 30 minutes into the headliner set because nobody's going to buy a ticket once the band is that far into the gig. So about that point, then I could kind of hang out a little bit and watch the rest of the show. So that's most of my clips are from that period onward.
You like your desserts?
anyways, that's pretty much it for right now. I'm working on a couple of good videos, and also we're in November. So that means best of the year coming up shortly. So I'll be shooting them out there as soon as they're ready. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.